Hi, I'm Peter Tragos, host of the Lawyer You Know podcast and YouTube channel. The saying goes, everyone hates lawyers until you need one. Well, I'm here when you need one to answer your questions and give you insight that you didn't know you needed. Along with my partners, Pete Sardis, the professor, who has a finance and business background, and George Tragos, my dad, and the consigliere, a criminal defense giant, we can answer any questions you have.
Hi everybody, Pete Sardis for The Lawyer You Know. We are back talking about Elizabeth Holmes. It's a post-trial update. Some pleadings got filed in the case that we're going to talk about today. But before we do that, as always, if you enjoy the episode, please give me a thumbs up. If you're enjoying this series, please subscribe to our channel. And as always, please leave us questions and comments below. All right, it has been a while since we've done this, so let me take a step back and give you a frame of reference. As you recall, Elizabeth Holmes was convicted on 4 counts back in January. She was acquitted on 3 and also had hung juries on the remaining counts. But regardless, she did get a conviction. And after the jury verdict was rendered and read aloud by the court, Ms. Holmes' lawyers stood up and did something called a Rule 29 motion. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second. A Rule 29 motion is a motion for a judgment of acquittal. It was an oral motion. Basically, lawyers got up there and said there's insufficient evidence to substantiate these convictions, and that was about the end of it. All right, so then what happens? Fast forward to Friday. The prosecution responds to the defense's Rule 29 motion and files a well-worded, in my opinion, 26-page response with a number of exhibits. I'm going to attach these to this video, or at least I'm going to try to give you some reference from where you can find them so you can see them yourself. And what winds up happening is that the rules of criminal procedure outline 2 very special motions that you would expect to see in every criminal case, especially if there is a conviction. One is under Rule 29, and that is a motion for judgment of acquittal. And what Rule 29 basically means is, at the end of a trial, if there is a conviction, the jury has returned a verdict against a defendant, the defense has the right to say to the judge, Your Honor, you should set these guilty verdicts aside and acquit the defendant, because there is not enough evidence, and the standard is there is insufficient evidence to sustain a conviction. Normally, these motions are kind of broken down, and the way we do them is we will ask the court to give us 14 days in order to file a written motion under Rule 29. That way, as opposed to standing in front of the judge after a moment where your client's just been convicted, they're sitting there all freaked out. You don't have to think and produce an eloquent legal speech to the court. What we prefer to do is ask the judge for leave, give me 14 days, judge, and I'll file a written submission. Normally the courts are very good about that, at which point you get to go back to your office, gather your thoughts, put your notes together, and actually attack every count of conviction with some sort of hard evidence, meaning this person testified to this while this person testified to the contrary. This document says this, but on the contrary, this document says that, meaning there's reasonable doubt, there's insufficient evidence, whatever the case may be. Ms. Holmes' lawyers did not elect to do that. What they elected to do was just do the oral motion, and they never filed a written submission at all. The government, in turn, did file a written submission on Friday. Here is the basic gist. The government's motion includes a number of exhibits. The ones that I find very interesting are the exhibits of Elizabeth Holmes' actual testimony, either in the public news sphere. Actually, it's all in the public eye. They actually did transcripts of her Today Show interview with Maria Shriver. They did a transcript of the Kramer Mad Money interview that she did. And they also did a transcript of Roger Parloff, who was doing the Fortune magazine article on Elizabeth Holmes. He actually had recordings, and the interview he did with Elizabeth Holmes was recorded, was transcribed, and they placed that in as an exhibit to their response to the Rule 29 motion. In addition, if you read it, obviously 26 pages long, they go line by line for each count of conviction, And they talk about, this is the evidence that came in. This is what this person testified to. These are the documents that substantiate this. Here are the text messages that demonstrate, that she was aware and knew, and there were discussions. So if you take a minute and look at it, you'll see kind of a nice orderly outline of all of the evidence the government presented that they believe substantiate the conviction of Elizabeth Holmes in at least those 4 counts. All right, so now what? Okay, the defense technically did a motion, an oral motion back in January. The government has now filed their written submission. At this point, the judge is going to do one of 2 things. Well, actually one of 3 things. He's either going to grant the motion for judgment of acquittal, meaning overturn Elizabeth Holmes' conviction, at which point she goes back and we start all over again. He will deny the motion, which basically says, yes, there is sufficient evidence to substantiate these convictions, or he will reserve a ruling. And I believe he's going to reserve ruling for a little bit, and I'll tell you why. Normally, with a Rule 29 motion comes something called a Rule 33 motion. What's the difference? And I'm sorry that I'm throwing jargon at you, but a lot of the federal practice is dictated by the rules, so we use the number of the rule to connote the actual document you're filing. For example, we just say Rule 29 as opposed to motion for judgment of acquittal. Rule 33 is a motion for a new trial. So normally what you would see in a case like this is not only a Rule 29 motion for judgment of acquittal, you would also see a Rule 33 motion asking the judge to give you a new trial because something inherently was unfair to the defendant during the initial trial that requires, in the interest of justice, which is standard, that requires the court to do the trial all over again. Again, normally you would see these motions in tandem, not necessarily filed together, but filed within a short amount of time with each other. There's a good chance Judge Davila, and a lot of judges do this, they reserve ruling on the Rule 29 motion on the judgment of acquittal in order to wait and see what the Rule 33 motion is, at which point they will either grant one, deny the other as moot, grant the other, deny, whatever the case may be, all in one foul swoop. That way there's no duplicity of effort being done there. So that's what I expect we're going to see. Beyond that, what's really interesting is that the defense did not do a written submission, which I think is odd. I think that the prosecutors also believe it to be odd because in the end of the response filed by the government on Friday, it indicates that the deadline for the written filings has come and gone without her lawyers, meaning Elizabeth Holmes' lawyers, filing anything. I think that was a little bit of a jab from the prosecution, basically saying, you guys missed the timeline, what are you doing? But without any more information, the court has to rule based on what it has in front of it, which is obviously the court's own recollection of the testimony and the judge's notes. Obviously, the court can rely on the defendant's motion and the government's response. So we should anticipate that a few things are going to happen in the near future. Either we're going to get a straight up granting or denying of the Rule 29, or what I think is going to happen more realistically is an indication the court is going to reserve ruling until the rest of the post-trial motions are filed and have a chance to be ruled on. Now, from this point forward, I'm not sure if we're going to see much happen, but for the Rule 33 motion, meaning the motion for a new trial that I expect is going to be filed also. Other than that, I really think the next major issue we're going to see, barring some explosion in the Sunny Balwani trial that has some effect on Elizabeth Holmes, is we're going to see things start happening in late July, maybe August. Don't quote me on the specific time frame, because I'm expecting we're going to see a sentencing memorandum that's filed on behalf of Elizabeth Holmes, which is when her lawyers are going to put her best foot forward for what the judge should consider at sentencing. Obviously, that's going to happen after the sentencing calculations are done by the probation office. Remember, her sentencing at this point is scheduled for September, so we still have a little bit of time before any of that stuff has to be filed and has to be done. So a lot of work being done, obviously, by the lawyers behind the scenes still. Just because it's not in the public eye doesn't mean things aren't being done. But at this point, hope you've enjoyed this episode. Again, if you like the episode, give me a thumbs up. If you're enjoying the series, please subscribe. And as always, please leave me questions and comments below. I'll keep you updated as things happen with the Elizabeth Holmes trial. As most of you already know, we're also covering the Sunny Balwani trial. So if you're interested in seeing what's happening in Sunny's case, hop over to that feed and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for watching this episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you like this content, please share it with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to our page and like our videos. If you want some interaction, get in the comments and we'll be sure to get back to you. If you want to know any more information about our firm or this page, you can find out in the description or visit tragoslaw.com. We post multiple times throughout the week, so make sure you hit that bell so you can get the notification and not miss out on the next episode.